tropical storm? Where does it exactly come in? And this is
Guys, I'm going to leave it on during the first set of commercials, just so you can watch.
If I live in Georgia and it makes landfall in North Carolina, will I still be affected? Yes. We never want you to pay attention to the center of the cone, because tropical storm force winds and some of these big hurricanes can extend out over 100 miles. So keep that in mind. So there we go. Even though going into warmer water temperature is not the end-all be-all when it comes to these storms. It also depends what's happening in the atmosphere around it. Waves are going to be a big issue with this, and I know people go to Hawaii for the waves, but you have to be really, really careful when you're talking about a tropical cyclone. Jen.
Well, also in the tropics, we've got a typhoon. This is Mangkhut, and it is affecting us in Guam right now in the Northern Mariana Islands. You can see, first of all, there's the bright shield of clouds out there, a lot of very heavy rain and strong winds. And we actually have 105-mile-per-hour wind. The eye went right
I forgot
over
to put that one on this morning.
Roti, and you can
Sorry.
see right now, south of that in Guam, we've had winds gusting to over 80 miles per hour, sustained at about 60 at Andersen Air Force Base, which is right here on that northeastern corner of the island. Plus the fact that Guam did not at all disrupt Mangkhut, so we're going to see that continue to actually increase in strength. It's going to be a super typhoon as it continues off to the west. All right, then we spin it around and take a look at what's happening in the Atlantic Basin. We've got Hurricane Isaac, 75 miles per hour. This is moving west as it's going to increase somewhat as it gets closer to the islands. So the track of this and the timing of this takes it into impact of the islands in about the Wednesday, Thursday time frame. Then we have this area to watch, a 40% chance of development. Now, once it moves out into the Gulf of Mexico, watch that potentially into impacting Texas by the end of this week. Steph.
Well, Florence is expected to hit the East Coast as a major hurricane, Cat 3 or higher, but people on the coast shouldn't be the only ones on alert. The serious inland flood threats that this storm is going to bring. And the National Hurricane Center has its hands full. They're monitoring several systems across the Atlantic. The director of the Hurricane Center joins us to talk about how his team is handling the multiple threats.
Do these moves look
familiar? All right, I'm going to leave it in on the commercials. I will mute the commercials, though. So hang on. We don't need to listen to them. All right, here in Virginia Beach, they have taken Norfolk area. The ships were ordered out to sea. The cruise liners have been told to avoid the area, I hope. I've been in one hurricane on a cruise ship, and that's something I never want to do again. You need to get yourself ready for this. If you're anywhere from North Carolina, South Carolina, and up, Florida and up, water, food, especially food you don't have to cook. I personally have made rice and put them in small bags, single-sized portions. I've got 14 gallons of water. I've got 4 gallons in the freezer, chest to keep my freezer cold if the power does go out. Be prepared. Take an emergency kit, a first aid kit, flashlight, batteries, radio. Get all the things you need. All right, I'll be turning the volume up here in a second. These commercials don't last that long, hopefully. This doesn't look so hot. Virginia is right above there. I'm sorry about the dead air, guys. But I definitely wanted to keep through the commercial this time. They're going to talk about how high the flooding will get when the storm hits, and that's what's getting I need to know also. I want one of those cars. Last night we had a severe bunch of rain. The reason I had to leave earlier on that live stream is My neighbor texted me and told me my lawn furniture was in her front yard. So here we go.
We're hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. We don't know what's going to happen, but we know this: the state response mechanism is in gear and is ready, and we want all the people to be smart and prepared.
You know, I haven't seen a forecast cone that looks this concerning in a long, long time.
Now, the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center says Florence is rapidly strengthening. You can see it on the satellite. It's tremendous. We'll show it to you. The size also increasing.
And there goes the wind field as well. Once it becomes a major hurricane, there is nothing out there to stop it as it tracks toward the Carolinas for later this week.
Yeah, good morning and welcome back into the show here. Extended hours all week long on the entire Weather Channel. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams alongside meteorologist Jim Cantore and Jen Carfagno.
I really can't stress enough, right now is the time to prepare. There's a lot that's going to be happening as we work our way through this week. We are talking about potential for evacuations. Think about where you're going. Don't send yourself into the inland flood threat. Okay, here's Charleston, though. Sandbags are for free. By the way, Charleston, you're still in the cone. Bring your shovels if you want the sandbags. Bottled water flying off the shelves in North Carolina, including Surf City. Gas stations are doing a brisk business in Raleigh, as we heard people are filling up there. Don't go crazy, but have a full tank, have some cash on you, maybe an extra battery for your cell phone as you leave to another place or are asked to leave. Don't go anywhere unless you're asked to leave. The whole reason to leave is to get out of the surge. And by the way, you see a little poocher down there in the bottom right? They're actually freeing up the fees for cat and dog shelters, the Animal Society, so that you can adopt a cat or dog. Because we know, Steph, that after these things, those shelters get way overcrowded.
Crowded with animals, yeah. All right, we want to give you a quick overview here with Florence. Right now, it's a Cat 2, but let me tell you, this thing is getting its act together, and it's getting its act together fast. You see the eye, you see the storms concentric around it. Winds right now 105 miles an hour. Pressure, when you see the pressure go down, so I'm talking when this goes down to 950, 940, that type of thing, when it's going down, those winds are going to go up. Sometimes there's a little lag between that. By the way, moving west-northwest at 9, if it stays on more westerly path, it's going to make a difference of where it makes landfall. So over the last 2 days, winds going back up, and by the way, they're going to continue. There's absolutely nothing to stop this thing. It was in some shear, no moss. So here's a look at our satellite picture. It was a blob at the beginning of this thing, and now look, see, no eye. You don't see the eye, and then boom, gets out of that shear, that dry air, and that thing is looking way too good for my comfort right now. This is not a good sign, guys. Not a good sign. So here we go with the cone. I don't want everyone to start obsessing where we have crews today, tomorrow, because this thing's going to shift. We're going to narrow it in. And Jim, someone asked me, oh, I live in Georgia. If it makes landfall in South Carolina, am I affected? Heck yeah, you are, even if you're not in the cone, because tropical storm force winds could extend out over 100 miles from the center.
Absolutely, and it may not wind down very quickly, especially if it gets a last-minute burst and is trying to develop even more so as we go inland. So let's talk about this. Steph just showed you a hurricane that is going to be a major hurricane by the end of today, if it's not by already. The steering flow with this is pretty substantial. Big ridge here, it's starting to build even more. Then it bends back over the system and steers it back toward the United States. There's no reason to believe that this doesn't continue as we work our way through the next 4 days, actually. But here's a look at a little different presentation of that. The ridge actually builds to the north of it. So it's not going to go up north and turn away. It has to go west. It has to go west. It has to landfall, we think, as we head in toward the weekend. The problem is we go from, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then it stalls. The steering just weakens considerably, and you wind up with this phenomenal rainfall event. And for those of you that are focusing on the center point of the cone, this is why I advise you not to do that. If you look at the clustering of the European guidance, these are all the ensemble members, okay? There's a lot of clustering in South Carolina. And so, if you're in Myrtle Beach, you need to be taking this just as serious as our friends in Wilmington, North Carolina. Now, most of the are going to be north and east of the center, okay? So when that comes in, that's where your tropical storm force winds are going to be. But initially, we're going to have a pretty expansive wind field, which will start in the Outer Banks, and they will spread inland. And of course, depending on the strength and the speed at which this is coming in, that's going to give us an idea how far west those winds could get. But you'll notice that some of these could get all the way back to the Ohio Valley. So to Steph's point, yes, Georgia, you could easily get tropical storm force winds possibly as we get in toward Friday. So here's what we know. Life-threatening flooding, U.S. impacts likely by the end of the weekend. We're going to have a major hurricane if we don't already. And the second part of this storm is a catastrophic flood potentially in the making. And Steph, looking at the pre-existing conditions, this is an area that's been wet all summer.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's happening in places like Raleigh, Washington, D.C., up that area. What do you see on these pictures in D.C., or I should say video, from D.C. and Raleigh that tells us that it's going to exacerbate the rainfall here? Do you see that you don't have blue skies? You don't have dry air in place? You have clouds. You have a lot of humidity in Raleigh. Look at the Euro bringing that rain. Where you see Wilmington, that orange color, that's a 5 to 8. The red is 8 plus. We could see 15 inches, if not 20 inches of rain, maybe 24 inches of rain in some locations. GFS American has it closer to the coast. So this is why you have to keep tuning back to the Weather Channel. We still can't say for sure where the center of circulation is going to go. We can't say where it's going to fall apart and sit and rain out. There are still a lot of details, Jen, to be worked out with this system.
Yeah, there's uncertainty when it comes to the track and the timing. But one thing we're more certain about is that it's going to slow down because there's not a front to sweep it out. So Florence is not just a coastal threat. It is also an inland flooding threat and gusty winds, which could mean power outages inland as well. I want you to look at this forecast. I'm going to take you through Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, into the weekend. What you notice is that we've got rain in this area the entire time. So we're talking about 4 to maybe even 6 days.
That was an earthquake.
Over the same areas. And it's
Sorry, I'll
tropical
check
rain,
it out
right? So
after
we're gonna be
this.
looking at big rainfall rates, the potential for tremendous totals coming out of this region. This is Sunday, and it still hasn't moved out yet. Now, the models differ on where exactly they're tracking the system, where exactly they're tracking the heaviest of rainfall, but they both have it slowing down. So when it comes to the European and the GFS. All right, here's the European model, brings in the core of the heavier rain actually well inland, and now we bring the Appalachians in place. So when you bring in higher terrain and mountains and tropical moisture, we look for big rainfall totals. I think about what we just did with the mountains in Hawaii, right? And we had 50 plus inches of rain. Not to say we're going to get that, but the potential is there for some big totals because of the interaction with terrain. The GFS model has it stalling right here off the coast or on the coast, but either way, bringing and tapping into that Atlantic moisture non-stop. Very heavy rain potential as well. A slow-moving tropical system is just not good because of that rainfall potential. We saw that last year with Harvey, of course. And when we look at what's setting the stage for the rainfall coming in, we've had one of our top 5 wettest, if not the #1 wettest on record, like in Baltimore and Wilmington. And Steph, very concerned about flash flooding here. We know that water is a big risk to life when it comes to tropical systems.
#1 killer. I mean, it is. So let's talk about the rip current. Not only the inland flooding, but also people going.
All right, guys, this is where we came in. I got to get moving. Thank you. God bless. Be safe.
We need to be alert for 3-foot surf.